at the festival, you worked for the Independent Research Service.
That's right.
Gloria Steinem.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea, too. Particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
You mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group. And I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962. You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had that I had for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent, I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does the CIA.
Why do you still do it? Why are you still out here?
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. You know, I made a bargain with it, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my hand.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
Oh, he doesn't
say this Earth?
And this Earth, and then in the world we can't see.
You said once that you thought that your father was a CIA operative. Yes?
Yeah, he was.
How do you know? What proof?
I shouldn't get into this right now.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. And I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12 way down the line. But I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time. But now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane. But I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it.
If you only knew how much money has been spent to brainwash you, you would actually feel really special. That Kate Dalley Show starts now.
Do you feel special? I hope you do. I hope you do. I asked a group of my favorite, I should say that out loud, but they're just, I love these people and they're the biggest support to me. But I used to do a 4th-hour group, and it was kind of like once a week we'd get on, talk about kind of what was happening behind the scenes. And that group has stayed with me, and I so appreciate they're just tremendous people. And I said, what ebook do you want me to put out next? And I think the consensus is that they want me to do the 60s revolution, how it impacted us and how far all the tentacles went. And so I think I'm gonna do that. I think that'll be the next one, hopefully. But you can weigh in too. Email me because I'm working on the front men: Elon, Bill, Marky Mark, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Have you noticed you haven't seen any movies about Bill Gates' life? Interesting. Anyway, just taking note. So there's all kinds of ebooks I'm currently working on. It's like, which one do I put out next? You can get, I left it up for a few days. You can still score on the 5 for $34. 5 ebooks with huge insights that'll make you think. So go get those. I shouldn't even say that because I should take it down today. But you know, what's one more day, right? So 5 ebooks, $34. Go get it at katetalks.myshopify.com. So that was a lot. That was Woody Harrelson admitting to Barbara that he was his father was CIA. And by the way, I think he is a half brother to Matthew McConaughey, which he admits. And then also you have all these characters. You know, you have Bob Dylan, you have oh gosh, you name it, Bob Dylan, and I mean, I've got the Beatles on there. I've got John Lennon on there. I've got you name it. Anyway, so many people. Gloria Steinem saying how she was an agent working for the CIA, admitting it, and I don't think they're afraid to admit it. Really, I think they want you to think that they're just part of. It's just part of being like they worked for the government. Isn't that noble? So, you wonder why the just basically the whole cabal, you know, had to put forth this 60s revolution, and how many people took part in it to bring us the women's movement, the Beatles, the Elvis. Elvis was precursor to the Beatles, kind of paved the way. I'll talk a little bit about him today because it all coincides. And you guys remember how I was talking about art and how it was art auctions and Handel's Messiah and different parts of art that actually kind of commingled with the orphanages, the orphan trains, all of that. And they would raise money through art. And remember the MGM lion head where it says in Latin, art for art's sake. So it all comes together. It all is kind of part of this. And hopefully I'll have time to bring it all home so that you can understand where I'm going with all of this. So, all right. So let's give it a whirl. Now, I have to say on headlines today, as I was starting the show, I was like, okay, what is it today? Because usually they want you to focus on Trump's hair, Trump's rear end, Trump, and then more of Trump. And I'm like, get off of Trump. I don't care whether you love him or hate him. He's the distraction. Okay. He's a distraction. So if you're getting distracted by him, and you don't like me saying that, you're not awake. You're just not. I'm here to tell you. So here is the headline for today. ABC sues FCC, First Amendment showdown. Okay. Threat to TV licenses. Do you guys believe this story? That ABC sues FCC, both owned by the government? First Amendment showdown, my ass. First Amendment showdown. Really, we haven't had the First Amendment in so long that I don't even know what to say anymore. Like the media has been taken over. So when you see a headline like this, it's government sues government and it's anything but First Amendment. It's just a distraction, a huge distraction. But that's the headline right now in mainstream news. So I don't know. I mean, they must have a lot of fun over at Langley trying to figure out what the next headline is, because I think people are actually going to believe that. So let's see. Aaron called this Terrible Truth Tuesday. That's a tongue twister. Terrible Truth Tuesday. Thank you. Yep. Hi, Crystal. Hi, everybody on here. Aaron. Oh my gosh, Johnny. Teal Green. You name it. Okay. I so appreciate you guys on YouTube. You can actually, when you watch this on YouTube, I know you can get it on SoundCloud on my website, which is katedalleyradio.com. Okay. You can you can scroll to the bottom and you can just get it while you're listening in the car. Okay. So it's on SoundCloud and it just kind of plays from my website. And this also plays live from my website at the top. So you can just listen to it like a radio show. And you can listen from any device in the country, anywhere in the world, really. katedalleyradio.com. So I'm live. And let's start out. Let's go back into this interesting world of the Beatles and culture and Dylan and the 60s and all of this, because in order for me to say what I just said about the headlines, you have to understand that how I see everything. And it comes from the knowledge that so many things were manufactured in the 60s. So many things, there was no revolution, there was a manipulation, but there was no revolution. When they used the word revolution, it was to distract. It was to distract you from the endless wars that people started kind of speaking up about. And it was the moon. They wanted to distract you from the moon landing, because if you really look at photos, they didn't hurl themselves 287,000 miles in tinfoil from Reynolds. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And there was no moon buggy. They had no way to put it together. They had nowhere to store it. Anyway, there's just so many funny things about the moon landing that we believed, but you know, it's so closely tied to our childhood. So I know that it's really tough sometimes to break through the barriers of truth, because everything is emotionally tied, but that's how they wanted it. It was a project. So let me ask you a couple of questions, okay? Because this goes back to the Beatles. It goes back to Elvis. I'm going to shine some light on the Beatles part 2, okay? So after doing this for 16 years, and after having about 300 to 350 interviews a year, and there's some interviews right now I could have, but I've actually said no to them. I'm tired. I'm tired of the manufactured guests. I'm tired of a lot of them are part CIA. I'm just tired of the cabal. So I try to break through as much as we can, because I don't know if I can keep the show going past September. So I'm trying to go into all of these different things that I never did on film, not film. Oh my gosh, how old am I? So on YouTube, so that they're there for people to peruse, right? So this is Beatles part 2, and I just wanted to make sure and give people that. We're just not getting enough. We're not getting enough donations to make this work. And the thing is it costs to do this show. So I can only fund it for so long. So anyway, and I'm sad. I'm really sad. Don't even get me going on that. But it's really hard to think that because I have such a love for this, and I have such a passion for questioning everything. So, and I think it's a God-given thing. I think it's just this passion to kind of turn everything over and figure out what's on the other side of it, because there's so much propaganda given to us, and it makes me sick, physically ill, to think that we believe a lot of it, right? And 2020 is a good example of that, of how many people still believe their government. So, all right, so here's some questions for you, okay? Remember in World War II, I said that they were working on several different things, because if you're going to kill the Jews, and by the way, that number is an interesting number, because there was about 300,000 in Germany, and a little bit more in surrounding countries. But it's kind of interesting how the story of World War II gets told now. Okay, the numbers don't add up. It's very strange. Okay. But there was one thing that should intrigue you, and that is when you're Nazis and you're scientists and you're kind of hell-bent on evil, okay, you are, and I think they weren't really Nazis, they're just Satanists, okay? So if this is you, and why would you not just kill people that you wanted to kill? Why would you be experimenting on them? Why would you be doing all of that? What would be the purpose of that? Unless you were trying to get to another destination point, right? So the destination point of Mandela and all of the experimentation that was going on, well, all you have to do is kind of look beyond World War II to see what we got after that, okay? And they had a fascination with twins. Remember that? Fascination with twins. Always twins, okay? They also had a lot of vaccine injury testing going on, because what was going to emerge after World War II was the big vaccination program and lie. They were spraying DDT, and those were the symptoms of polio, but then the polio doses came out, okay? So we were supposed to believe that the polio doses kept polio away, when it actually was a result of the fact that we stopped spreading DDT everywhere, because that's what made it go up in 1950, 51, 52, and 1949, okay? So when you take into account the fact that they were doing this heavy experimentation, you have to ask yourself what was going on there. why do they have to paint it kind of differently, or they don't shed light on certain parts of that? So keep that kind of in the back of your mind, because there's a really good start. So, Paul McCartney was born during World War II, and his brother, and a lot of people think it's his twin brother, but it was kind of told to everybody that they were 18 months apart. And let me show you this. Okay, let me show you this, because this is one theory. So I want to go to some theories. So these are the two brothers, okay, but they don't look a lot different in age, okay? So this is kind of an interesting one, because it's a theory that it's very plausible, although it's going to be hard for people to believe that they would have taken twins like this and possibly replaced one twin with the other twin, and then possibly replaced who the brother was. Now, you don't ever hear much about Paul McCartney's brother, do you? They keep him out of the news, which is kind of funny, but they keep him out of the news. And these guys were born during World War II. Okay, so this is going to get kind of interesting. So when we get into the psyop of after World War II, what we got, okay? Here's some questions for you. Were their family backgrounds or lack of backgrounds usable, right? Could they be influenced? There's power, fame, money, okay? So were they willing to be influenced? Do they have a natural talent or an it factor? Okay. Do they have something there? Either some musical ability, like in the Beatles case, they had some musical ability, but not hardly anything there. So they were playing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Okay. They had to do a Scottish lullaby because they weren't very creative. Okay. And they weren't very musical. They knew basic chords. So then the other one, do they have that natural talent? Some talent, yes. You got to have some talent. You couldn't I don't know if you could just manufacture somebody cold and do it. So there's lots of movies right now that shape the past. We had the movie about Elvis, about Colonel Parker, right? Was he the handler? But my hypothesis on Elvis was that he was manufactured, he was created, and that, he had a handler, but it didn't really matter because he himself, he was also a twin, but the twin died. So, okay, so I'm going to throw that, it's just weird. Anyway, also a twin. So they love the twins. So anyway, so we have this, and there's, I know this is going to sound so crazy, but there's two different Elvis faces, and I want you to really look up Elvis, because there's the Elvis face that kind of isn't as pretty as another Elvis face. Okay, so there's the one with the really pretty defined features, and one where the features aren't so pretty. And you could say it's age, but I don't know if the features are going to change that much. So we have a problem here, and that is we're shown certain things. We have people that could be put in a position to be bought, influenced, taken over, manufactured, okay? And we have a switch in society that is bigger than anyone can fathom. And never before in history, as I said in the part 1 show, never before in history has anyone changed as much as we changed. And I mean, it went from like this to like this, right? Culture change in 1 decade, okay? You could say 1.5 decades, like completely changed. Attitudes changed, the look changed, everything changed. Hippies came on board. We had a drug culture. We had the 60's revolution. All of a sudden, all the women got mad at once. All of a sudden, every woman in America felt cheated and felt like they didn't want to make a sandwich for the guy they loved and didn't want to be home with their kids anymore. Okay, so that all happened in like a decade and a half. And we were supposed to believe that it was natural. I don't think anything about it was natural. So Terrible Truth Tuesday, yes, here we are. So I appreciate that. That's funny. Yeah, okay. So let's keep going, because the 60s are kind of this really interesting time. If you think of the Roaring 20s, they were kind of pushing sexual freedom, right? But not as strongly as the 50s and 60s. And you had all of these kinds of like little things going on. Gloria Steinem, as she said in the opening clip, she was placed at the university level, at the kid level. And think about that in today's terms too. Who's at the college level? A lot of your little protest groups merge from that, converge there. Okay. But she was there to solely work for the CIA and to bring about this dynamic woman's culture where the job became more important than your children, than raising a family, and that you could have it all, even though it's a lie. You really can't have it all. Something suffers. And so they were there to sell it, and sell it hard. So the CIA is formed in 1947, and the intelligence community kind of began this great expansion, okay? And it was the media, universities, and also in art. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit later, because there's something about art that they utilize. Remember the lion, art for art's sake, okay, for MGM, okay? There was a destination point for all that. So it's no coincidence that these major manufactured events kind of erupted in the 50s, right? You had Elvis kind of bringing in the beat. Remember Beat of the Beatles, B-E-A-T? Okay, so bringing in the beat, the changing of the hertz, the music, okay? That happened, I think, in 1953. And you had all of these, the promotion of a lot of subversive writers, which were like New York Times, Viking, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation. Remember, the Carnegie Foundation was the foundation responsible for changing education. And they wrote so in their notes in 1907. It took a while, but they wanted all the teachers trained uniformly so that we would not bring up the Constitution anymore. So we would not bring up what was special about this country, our God-given Constitution. So they did not want the kids to learn about that. So there was a concerted effort by the Carnegie Foundation to change education. So the promotion of these writers, these mouthpieces, okay, were kind of the setup. It was like full swing, promote culture change, okay? So remember that the decision to include culture and art in the U.S. Cold War, it was a very concerted effort. And I don't know if you've ever put art and the CIA together in this, but there was a very, very, very interesting article called Modern Art with CIA Weapon. And it revealed how it didn't reveal everything, of course, because this is written in a form of being, mainstreamish. But they revealed how the spy agency used unwitting artists, such as Pollock and de Kooning, in a cultural Cold War, okay? So part of that was the Cold War. Now, you've heard me talk about the Cold War. I think the Cold War was a complete and total setup. It had nothing to do with nothing. A country, think back to in time, has there ever been a country that didn't do so well in a war and lost a lot of men, a lot of things, a lot of equipment, okay, a lot of war arsenal, okay, and then got up 5 minutes later to fight and bring on a Cold War with the people that won the war? Just think back in history for just a moment. Nope. So we have a problem in believing, I would imagine, that Russia was there to fight this Cold War with the United States. It's absolutely BS, asinine, okay? And it was made up by the CIA to sell us on the fact that it was going to be a necessary means for the CIA to operate and not have a budget and not have any oversight whatsoever. That was the catalyst. So it was like, look, we have to fight a Cold War. Russia's out to get us. Go hide under your desk. Russia's going to nuke us. That narrative's been going for 70 years. Have they done it? I was just nope, nope. And nope. Has anyone nuked anyone? I hear crickets. Nope. And has the threat in been over history, over 70 years we've been getting this threat. Yep. Kind of interesting. So yeah, we still believe it. And I do not believe it. I think it's a joke. And the joke's on us because we believe it, and they use it for feardom for everything they introduce to steal liberty. So it's not plausible. See, this show is really about pointing out what's plausible, what's not plausible, because it just ain't plausible. Look, you had the Beatles, okay? The Beatles were teenagers, okay? Teenagers, all right? And you had not only the Beatles, but you had guys that were, let's say, 17, 18, 19, okay? And their manager was 20 years old. And we're supposed to believe that Brian Epstein's first job as a manager, finding teens, okay, that couldn't do much, okay, except play basic chords in My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, were then going to be manufactured in 6 months into the biggest group in the world with Capitol Records, one called the Capitol Records, by the way, on speed dial by the 20-year-old Brian Epstein. And that would result in the biggest campaign, the biggest music. Well, let me just put it this way. When people talk about the Beatles, they go, the Beatles, like the revolution of the Beatles, like they changed everything. Why do we say that? Why do we say that? We say it because we were told to say it. We say it because Capitol Records put on the biggest propaganda machine over the course of a couple months that any group has ever seen anywhere for a couple of teenagers. And they changed their look. They gave them music. Okay. It's kind of like what Elvis said. Elvis said he never had an idea for a song and he never wrote a song. All songs were written for him. Same with the Beatles. All songs were written for them too. Okay. And I think it's probably good to keep that in mind because when we say they're artists, what are we actually saying? Okay. Are they artists? Well, they're really good at being told what to sing and what to do. Okay. So, yeah, so it gets a little interesting. And a lot of this is Tavistock. Tavistock was at the helm of a lot of this. And so that part gets pretty interesting too. And I talked about that in the Beatles 1. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about this kind of time in history. Okay, so U.S. government establishes CIA 1947. It included a division known as the Propaganda Assets Inventory, a branch of psychological warfare. It was intended to sort of boost all the pro-American messaging during the Cold War, okay? Because we had people starting to step out and talk about the fact that we were in Vietnam, we shouldn't have been there, which was true. And they had to kind of have something countering to that, right? So the moon landing and the Beatles and Elvis, a lot of the writers were told to concentrate on these things, okay? So they set up this new propaganda assets inventory. And this was to influence over 800 newspapers. Remember the hearings, the congressional, or were they Senate hearings in the 70s that talked about CVS and the CIA. So, and they remember they had to go to closed door sessions because they didn't want the public to hear because the information was a little too sensitive. Well, magazines, public information, everything was coming out of this propaganda assets inventory, the PAI. Okay, so does the CIA admit to this? Yes. If you don't know about this, get educated on it because they come out and they talk about it. So they joked that it was like a Wurlitzer jukebox. When the CIA pushed a button, it could hear whatever tune it wanted playing across the world because they had so many writers telling you that this was the most phenomenal group in the world. And this was the best singer in the world. And this person was a poet, as in Dylan. And this person was, like almost like demigod, you know? So they could write about it, influence, tell us how to feel, tell us what to think. And that's kind of how it kind of filtered down to us. So it isn't a conspiracy theory. A lot of your, asses, I call them the masses. The masses asses, they love to kind of go here where it's all, that's a conspiracy. No, it's not. Actually, you can just look this up. This is this is literally fact. And they admit it. I don't think they have a hard time admitting it anymore because it's so infiltrated. But so the Independent admits that it had been confirmed by former CIA officials and documents that have been declassified. And the CIA actively supports the abstract expressionists, right? Getting back into art, the CIA infiltrated the arts, and every art defining which art is considered good and which isn't. It was pretty much a long leash given to the CIA. Centerpiece of the CIA campaign became the Congress for Cultural Freedom. Yeah, they turned it into Congress for Cultural Freedom. This was kind of like a jamboree of intellectuals, writers, historians, poets, artists, which was set up and then sanctioned by the CIA, run by the CIA. They had such a heavy influence on who we are that I think people can't comprehend it now. I just think that they just think this was all a natural evolution, that we went from decade to decade to decade to decade, ballroom, orchestra music, all the classical, and then all of a sudden exploded into hippiedom, right? It didn't just happen. So I did a show on African voodoo, Introduction to Rock and Roll. The layers of multiple rhythmic drumming are considered a primary source of occult power, actually. But this music, this 4/4 time, so you kind of wonder why the Beatles, it was the Beatles, and why it was the beat movement at the time. So this was, mainstream America introducing Elvis on the scene. It went to a little less conversation, a little more action. By the way, Mac Davis wrote that song, not Elvis. A little less conversation, a little more action. I actually like that song. Burning Love, Jailhouse Rock, Hound Dog, You're the Devil in Disguise, right? So 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, go cat go. It's always about the show. It's funny. I think they kind of laugh sometimes at the lyrics being written, but so you look at all the people around us, Elvis, the Beatles, you look at how they become famous. Is it plausible? And I think, each story has so many holes that it's really, really, really hard to digest the holes. I think it's just hard for people. They don't want to, because it shoots a hole in everything that they think is real. And it's not. Let me kind of show you an example of this. Okay. I want to show you an example. Here is Paul McCartney next to Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr is really, really short. Okay. Ringo Starr is short. Here's Paul McCartney. Yeah, it's about the same. Okay. Maybe an inch or 2 more, but Ringo's very little. Okay. So was Paul McCartney. Okay. So is Paul McCartney, whatever. Now, I want you to look at this picture of the Beatles. This was post 66. Okay. Now, a lot of people think Paul died in an accident. That's one theory, and that he was replaced by Billy Shears, a studio musician that could impersonate any voice. And then remember that whole year they took off, and then then they went back and they had a Japan concert. Weird to pick Japan, but in 1967. Okay. Now, here's a picture of the Beatles post 66. Okay. Either Paul McCartney retired and his twin took over, or Billy Shears did, because this guy is so much taller than Ringo. Okay. Let me go back. Here we go. Same-ish height. And then we go to this one. And this is how all the photos are, by the way. This is way taller than the rest of them. Interesting. Okay. So I thought this is compelling enough that you can't hide it. What's the explanation for this? It's a little strange. A lot of people think that they're actually twins, and that this is Paul McCartney on the right, and on the left, this is his twin. And what they did was take his twin brother and put somebody different in that character while this person took over for this person. Interesting. I'm just running all these by you because I think that this is kind of an interesting, they're both interesting theories, okay, that are both actually more plausible than the real story. Remember, you have a bunch of teens playing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean with no talent. They were taken by Bruno, this older gentleman. He finds him in a club, takes him to Germany. Why Germany? Makes no sense. Takes him to Germany, where they manufacture the music to the group. So the music's being written somewhere else, probably Tavistock. And then the music is then being performed by them so that they can look a little better playing it, because they were all sort of rudimentary artists, okay? And they're teenagers, so they're not very good, okay? So we're supposed to believe that this older gentleman saw these guys playing music. Okay, the band wasn't quite formed the way we see the Beatles now, but they bring him over to Germany, pay for their room, pay for their lodging, pay for everything. For 3 solid months, they put him into a club, okay? And then they bring him back over to London, to the Cavern Club. And there they are spotted by Brian Epstein, who's never, ever done anything as far as being a manager of anybody, and he's only 20. So he's only like a year older than the oldest member of the Beatles. And, you think about a 20-year-old right now, and then think about some teenagers. These are not the kind of guys that you're going to pick out and say, this is going to be the biggest band in the world, okay? So they have a 20-year-old manager, and John Lennon kept saying, we trust him with our life. We trust him with our life. It's like, why would you? And he's 20 and he's never had any experience. How does he have the president of Capitol Records on speed dial? Capitol Records wouldn't take my phone call. I've been on the planet a while. So here's a 20-year-old kid. He worked at a record shop. He's supposed to be believable as going in, seeing this barely a group for 3 months, goes in and goes, yep, I want to manage you full time. And it turns out that his only pick at 20 years old happened to be the biggest band in the world. Wow, so plausible. So yeah, and that Capitol Records immediately upon the request of this actually put out the biggest propaganda, alluring, like, the Beatles are coming, they're amazing, biggest rock band in the world. They didn't have very many hits at the time. How'd they know that? And showing up on Ed Sullivan not but a month later, and obviously very dialed in and programmed to become what the writers were going to then profess, and that was the Beatles were the biggest band in the world. They were changing our culture revolution. Look at their look, which was all manufactured. Look at their sound, which was all manufactured. All the Beatles songs, go look at the entire catalog. There's no way they wrote those songs. They're too masterful, okay? Same goes for Dylan. Elvis had admitted he never even had an idea for a song, not even a single idea. Okay, so they're in the throes of doing all of this. I talked about this in Beatles Part 1. I went over this a little bit, and then I showed you this cover, and this cover is so telling. First of all, they're all playing flute instruments, kind of like the Pied Piper, like leading the children astray. Did they play flute instruments all the time? No. But I have to say right here, I have to kind of give you a little bit of that list, because I don't think people ever kind of dial in on who they're really looking at, okay? Now, I have to kind of give you the answer before I kind of go into this a little bit, but what was one of the reasons they wanted to do the 60s cultural revolution? And that was to get us away from God. A lot of the underlining things out of the 60s revolution it wasn't just to change the teenagers and to change and destroy the family, because that's really kind of what was going to come out of the 60s from then on. But it was also about the removal of God. And you guys remember that 1969, I mean, you go back and you start really looking at the Buddhism, the culture they were bringing in and calling cool. That was a desired effect for years, that sort of the people behind the plans of all of this, I think that was actually one of their true desires. Now, I want you to look at this cover. And who's on this cover, okay? A Hindu guru, okay? Giri. So you had Aleister Crowley, Satanist. They call him an occultist. I mean, let's just call it. He's a Satanist. Mae West, who was probably on the payroll of the club. Lenny Bruce, comedian. You had W.C. Fields. You had Carl the psychiatrist. You guys see him. Edgar Allan Poe, Fred Astaire. Remember, Fred Astaire actually had a bedroom at Cary Grant's house, the house he shared with his lover, Randolph Scott. Then we were supposed to be sold that they were all just straight, but they weren't. Anyway, so Fred Astaire hung out with Cary Grant and Randolph a lot. Let me just say that. Richard Merkin, let's see, Hunts Hall actor, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's on there, kind of interesting. Sir Robert Peel, he was the British Prime Minister. We had Huxley, the writer, Dylan Thomas, a poet, all kinds of people. Tony Curtis, an actor, Marilyn Monroe. Remember when I had the guest on about the artifacts that were taken, not taken, but received and then not given to the CIA when they demanded them. And it happened to be JFK's watch. Remember when I had that guy on? And he spent some years in prison. Well, he said Marilyn Monroe was a spy because JFK was gay. So there was no way she was going in to be his lover. And so they made that whole cover story up of him being a playboy and stepping out. But really he was gay, and his buddy, right? Len, I can't remember his name, lived in the White House with him, by the way. Go look it up. So Marilyn Monroe, a spy. So very interesting that she's on this cover. Oliver Hardy, Karl Marx, Stan Laurel, H.G. Wells, a lot of Hindu gurus. And then you get into the third row, which is Marlon Brando, kind of an interesting one. Tom Mix, actor, Oscar Wilde, Tyrone Power, Larry Bell, David Livingstone. You had, Johnny Westmuller, who played Tarzan. The George Bernard Shaw, the playwright. You had Westerman, the sculptor, art. You had Lewis Carroll, the writer, T.E. Lawrence, for Lawrence of Arabia. Boy, so many more on here. And then the front row was a wax model of George Harrison, a wax model of John Lennon. Interesting. Shirley Temple, a wax model of Ringo Starr, wax model of Paul McCartney. Why would you put that on there? It's so funny. Albert Einstein. There's a lot of stories about Albert kind of outing who he really was. John Lennon holding a French horn. Ringo Starr. Of course, Paul McCartney. George Harrison, a piccolo. Betty Davis. That was an interesting one. Marlene Dietrich, who outed herself. She was completely outed as a CIA. She was trading secrets for the CIA during World War II. So Marlene Dietrich, Mahatma Gandhi, and of course, a wax model of Deanna Dors, the actress. Shirley Temple has a second appearance on the cover. They also had a stone figure of Snow White, little nod to Disney, and the idol of the Hindu goddess. And of course, they had a stone figure of a girl, all kinds of just weird, strange, a garden gnome, a cloth snake, flowers, all kinds of just weird things. And the reason I'm telling you this is sometimes, it's a weird collection of people and artists, right? And poets and all the same. But what's strange is that we never really looked, I think, when that came out. I think some people did, but it was just kind of an interesting look at who they would choose for that cover. And I think it's more telling than we think it is. Remember Sergeant Pepper, head of the MI6 at the time, and remember the words to that. I went over that in Beatles 1, where it was like Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play. And of course, it was called the Lonely Hearts Club Band. I would imagine because if it's what I think it is, and these people are showcased as products and manufactured products of the CIA, then, like Marilyn Monroe, given her look, given everything, she did not look like that. She didn't act like that. And then all of a sudden the character, and she alluded to her character of Marilyn Monroe all the time. It was a character. They all played characters, name changes. Okay. Very interesting as you're looking back and thinking, wow, how many people were actually manufactured products of this group and of the CIA, and then how they utilized all their vast resources with the Assets Club to make known that these people were the biggest, the brightest, the most popular, everything about everything, right? So it's just, here you go, here's who's popular, here's who you should listen to. They still do it to this day. So let me go back. I'm going to go back to this just a little bit. All right. So I did the show on Elvis and his promotion under Sun Records, which, by the way, the guy that ran Sun Records, there's huge stories about him being part of the club, and how the story was built so that Sun Records would, quote unquote, find him and then spin him off as Elvis, but I did a show on Elvis. It's actually on SoundCloud. All you have to do is Google Kate Dalley show in SoundCloud, and Elvis, and you'll find it. But I did a huge show, 2-hour show on him, because there was so much there. And I think that, here's a guy that I think they could. We're supposed to believe that at 18, he walks into Sun Records, he asked to record. It doesn't really work that way, but Sun Records wasn't open to the public until late 1953, and Phillips had opened a Memphis recording service almost 4 years later. By late 53, he was working with dozens of name acts. You didn't just walk off the street and pay for studio time. You were asked to come in. So the story is told that Elvis chose Sun Records. By the way, there's a Phillips over Sun Records that did this. And then, of course, there's the same Phillips that was the one that initially was involved with the Beatles and the recording of the Beatles. Isn't it interesting? They had the same name. Anyway, so the first one to record, take those recordings of the Beatles. So the whole history of Sam Phillips has kind of been scrubbed, and this is a major red flag. He was a subsidiary of Philips Electronics. His family dates back. It's kind of a weird story, but it's interesting when you look at the likes of the Beatles next to Dylan, next to the Rolling Stones, and you kind of look at what was coming out of the music scene at the time. So Sun Records was the one that spinned out Elvis to us, and very quickly everybody's rise to fame was super, super fast, even though these people did not have the talent really to say that they were going to be this next biggest band, biggest guy, biggest king in the world, right? So that was kind of interesting, I thought. The Beatles, 6 months. The whole look was changed. Everything was changed. Their music did not sound anything like the only song they ever produced, which I played on the Beatles 1 show. But I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like, there's no way they could have written all those songs. But Elvis too, all of a sudden he's just skyrocketing to the top, but it's how the news and how the media is portraying him. So it's how that's getting done. Okay. Because that's the influencer. Influencer is telling you who to pay attention to. Okay. You can manufacture somebody and place them on the stage, but you have to have the influencers telling you how to feel about them all through history. So, okay. So, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Well, it was 20 years ago today, and I did this on the Beatles one, but here we go. Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play because he really did. They've been going in and out of style, but they're guaranteed to raise a smile. So let me introduce you to the act you've known for all these years, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We hope you enjoy the show. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, sit back and let the evening go. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, it's wonderful to be here. It's certainly a thrill. You're such a lovely audience. We'd like to take you home with us. We'd like to take you home, but I really don't want to stop the show. But I thought you might like to know that the singer's going to sing a song. See, it's all manufactured. And he wants you to sing along. So let me introduce you to, right? So it's I think the music itself is just so telling, but because you could go back into a lot of the lyrics, and if you realized what was going on, right? And that we're supposed to believe a bunch of teenagers were founded by a 20-year-old, okay, with no music band experience at all. He was gay, and I don't have a problem with somebody being gay. He was very closeted, and it sounds like he got out of a jail term, and maybe that was the spinning point for him to work for the club. His father, I think, worked for the club. So I think that was a catalyst so that people didn't know he was gay at the time. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. It's kind of part of the story no one ever talks about, is that all of a sudden he had no sentence. He had a sentence and then no sentence. And oftentimes people are given that you work with us and we'll keep your secret, and then we won't give you jail time. So, because he was caught doing some acts at the time that were illegal. So there you go. So we're supposed to believe that this all happened, and that that this was just so natural, and that in 6 months, voila. Okay. So since the 50s, you've had Hollywood, the music scene weighing in on politics, points of view about culture, all kinds of things. And this was on purpose because they wanted to groom these people to guide the world on how to think and what to like by the people we looked up to in music and the people that were the stars. So this is kind of how it goes. And let's see here. So the Beatles signed Epstein's first management contract, but Epstein did not. I'm sorry, but this is your only band I think you're going to sign. Okay. I think you're going to do it. And then he mysteriously died. Suicide. He was suicided. I think when he was 32. So the Beatles were not making, so the contracts, were going to the house. They weren't going to the Beatles. Obviously, their catalog wasn't going to them, right? So kind of interesting on that whole thing. I could talk about that, but I'm limited on time. So there's more there, though, as far as the contracts go. And Northern Songs, a creation of Northern Songs. It was a company, okay, named after his father's furniture store. But okay, so we had the fifth Beatles, we had Sir George Henry Martin, we had a lot of studio musicians stepping in all the time. I don't think anyone ever knew really who was playing what. Epstein dies of a sudden death at 32, drug overdose? Anyway. And of course, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit of this because we don't have time, but okay, so by 66, they weren't selling so much, and they basically broke up, right? I think it was 69, but in 66, it wasn't making the big impact. So there was the destruction of Christianity that they were after as well, getting people away from God. Intelligence had been trying to destroy Christianity since 1800s, right? So it gets kind of interesting because the Beatles suddenly became Buddhists and Eastern mystics. All of a sudden, the getting into the drug culture that the CIA was pushing at the time, pushing LSD at the time. Remember that the concert where the cops were told to stand down as the CIA was handing out LSD. Yeah, the Beatles denied that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was written to push LSD, but there are signs that it was. So, okay, so you had the Beatles that were not very talented. You had Theodore Adorno, who was the head of Tavistock at the time, who would have been very capable of writing a lot of these music pieces. There were several people, actually, that could have written these music pieces. You had John Pepper, who was the head of the entire British spy organization in the United States from the late 1940s. His presence pretty much scrubbed from literature. Yeah, you had all of this going on. And then they had the song The Revolution. Okay, I talked about that last time because basically it was telling us that we wanted a revolution. They weren't the ones wanting it. They wanted us to think we wanted it. You say you want a revolution. Did we? No. But this is how they do it, though. It's a mind warp. It's just a mind warp. So, all right. So let me skip a little bit because I want to talk just for a moment about this kind of situation with Bob Dylan. Okay, because I did a show on Bob Dylan and it was interesting. It was interesting. It was a long show. So here's Bob Dylan. Doesn't look like the hippie guy that we're used to, right? Okay. But let me that's because he wasn't. Let me talk just a little bit about Bob Dylan for just a moment. So a couple of things I didn't mention when I did the show before. So there's Allen Ginsberg. He came from a wealthy Jewish family. Okay. And so we have Dylan hobnobbing with Ginsberg. Okay. And Ginsberg was kind of maybe a creepy guy. And no one would be hanging out with him. It was an odd pairing. And we're supposed to believe that we see more red flags with this too. In 1961, at age 20, okay, Dylan, at age 20, again, Dylan scored a review in the New York Times, okay? And he had this just insane ride to the top, which, again, they had the Assets propaganda machine going full force for Dylan, painting him as a poet, painting him as amazing, okay? So he'd only been playing in Greenwich Village for about 6 months and had no original material. Think about that. No original material. None of these guys do. And he hadn't written any of his early songs, but I guess he was a poet. Okay. But we're supposed to believe that. And then somehow the New York Times does a review of him. Why him? Why would you take a 20-year-old that hasn't been seen or no one knows who this guy is? Okay. And by the way, his dad worked for Standard Oil. Okay. Anyway, so here's this guy. The New York Times picks him out of a hat. Okay. He was the opening act at for the Greenbrier Boys at Gertie's Folk City. Okay. There were about 10 people in the audience. I talked about this once on the show. So let's analyze that for 1 second. Same with the Beatles. Remember, I showed you a picture of the building that they performed in at the Cavern Club. It had like 20 chairs. Again, Gertie's Folk City, maybe 10 people. So who wrote the review? Well, it was Robert Shapiro, okay, who went by the name Robert Shelton, maybe to hide his last name, who knows? But who was booking Gertie's at the time, right? Charlie Rothschild. That's who was doing I'm going to book the acts that come to this Gertie's Folk City with 10 people in attendance, okay? So that's kind of interesting. The Sulzberger family, and this is according to Miles Mathis, extremely wealthy Jews who founded the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. So yeah, because it gets more interesting. So even before the New York Times and all the other media were taken over by the CIA in the 50s, the paper had been extremely controlled, okay, to say the least. So obviously somebody had a plan in a 10 people seated room that Dylan, who had no original anything, was then the biggest thing ever, okay, at 20. And we'll call it Operation Rolling Stone, okay? So we know intelligence was running all these secret operations, Mockingbird, Bluebird, Operation Chaos, MK Ultra, all of these things. But this was like a more, well, look at Rolling Stone, right? You're rolling away from your family, away from your values. You're a rolling stone, right? It was meant to mean a lot of things, in other words. And so this promotion of change to all forms, to what end? The promotion of trade. The Jews and the Gentiles would run the 20th century, were masters of trade, right? Money lenders. But in the 20th century, they discovered this way to accelerate the money beyond even their own dreams. Do you ever wonder where all the money has gone for all of these stars, for all of these manufactured stars? Do you really think they're sitting on a mountain of money? Or do we just believe that? Okay, because Michael Jackson bought the rights to the Beatles music, and then of course they offed him. So it's just interesting. All went back to Sony. Okay, so I think they keep it tightly controlled, right? So new products, more wealth, more products, more wealth. And so you just keep throwing it out there, right? But you're in charge of it all. You're the one, you're manufacturing it all. Who do you think the money actually goes to? So people don't really like change. This is why naturally we would have never changed that much. I mean, to that degree in one decade, because people are very resistant to change. They don't like it. Okay. And so we kind of equate it with discomfort. Okay. So this promotion change was going to go against human nature, right? You're looking at hippies now. All of a sudden, people are walking around naked. You just went from prim and proper and pillbox hat to naked with long hair and, just hedonism. And I mean, that is a huge shift. Whether you like that or not, it's a huge shift for people to do in such a short period of time. As interesting and phenomenal as the Beatles becoming who they were and becoming all the master of music and all these different tunes in the course of 6 months, or Dylan being found at 20 and all of a sudden no original material and all of a sudden he's the biggest thing on people's minds, and then all of a sudden Elvis comes out of nowhere and Sun Records picks him up and he walks in to record something for his mama, which we're going to believe, and then all of a sudden that story is retold and retold and retold and retold to us so that we really firmly believe it. How many shows about Elvis? How many shows about his life? Right. And then what was Bob Dylan's latest movie? A Complete Unknown. I laughed so hard when I saw that. I'm like, really? I mean, they're just laughing at us at this point. But Dylan, A Complete Unknown. Why did they say that for the title of the movie? The last movie they just put out. Oh my gosh. I just can't believe we believe this crap. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, he was completely unknown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he really was. So anyway, let me bring you to this point because this was kind of just an interesting little segue. Okay, so Bob had wanted to join Little Richard, right? And the choice of Little Richard is really, really strange because he didn't sound like Little Richard, but there's a Bobby V connection and it doesn't make any sense. So, and when things aren't plausible, they're not truthful. So did Dylan ever have anything in common with Little Richard or Bobby V? Let me show you a picture of Bobby V. Bobby V was another one who was a teenager, but all of a sudden we were supposed to believe that he was this huge brilliant singing star. Okay. So this is Bobby V. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Dylan back on here, but let me just say this. So I was flipping through movies the other night, and I was watching the movie about Buddy Holly and Richie Valens. Okay, and they were selling it hard, and I think that there could have been something else, maybe bigger story there, that they're kind of trying to hide. Could be a plane crash. I'm not saying that it wasn't possible that naturally a plane would go down, but this was kind of interesting if you really look at the story and understand this piece of it. So Bob Dylan was 18 and Bobby V was 15. Okay. They're in their teens. Now think about if you have a teenager. Okay. So how does a 15-year-old boy from Fargo, North Dakota, who's Bobby V, sell a song to a record company and get a contract with an even larger Liberty Records that same year? It doesn't even make any sense. You're 15 years old. You're barely playing at a school recital. Okay. At this point, you're a freshman or a sophomore in high school. You have no connections. Okay. So the record companies were not desperate for talent. Okay. And do you think maybe Bobby V had some connections due to his family? So, could be. Okay. So V's career started in 1959. He was chosen to fill in, get that, for Buddy Holly on the day the music died. Just so happens, 15-year-old little boy from Fargo, who doesn't have very much experience, to play in Moorhead, go across state lines in Moorhead, Minnesota. Okay. V was a minor, couldn't even get across state lines if he wanted to, legally without somebody's help driving him. He didn't even have a driver's license. Okay. But his parents had to pretty much drive him. But we're told that V and his band volunteered to fill in and were accepted because, you don't have anyone else. Okay. Which is so weird. So they were supposed to fill in because at age 15 in high school, it's pretty much, it's like freshmen. Okay. This middle school band filling in for Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. Do you think the people in the audience, the ticket holders, they'd be like, here's your middle school band. Here you go, you lucky dog who came to see them, but they died. So here you go. Yeah, I don't think so. We're told that that it was a raging success. You really think the ticket holders would tell you that it was a huge success watching a 15-year-old play in lieu of Buddy Holly, the late Buddy Holly, Richie Valens? Okay. So what did they call themselves? They called themselves the Shadows. Okay. And in V's own words, right, he said, about a week after this, I had just organized a vocal and instrumental group. So they were brand new together. They hadn't even played together. Okay. Instrumental group of 5 guys. Our style was modeled after Buddy's approach, Buddy Holly. And we had been rehearsing with Buddy's hits in mind. Why were they? Did they know he was going to die in a plane crash and they were going to get picked to be able to sing his music? Anyway, maybe they were just, maybe it's a coincidence, but I'm not a coincidence theorist. When we heard the radio plea for talent, we went in and volunteered. Volunteered? You were trying to get it. You were 15. No one knew who you were. And you had just thrown yourselves together as a group. You didn't even have any experience playing together, which is even more unbelievable. So hadn't even named the group up to that point. So they gave themselves a name on the spot and called themselves the Shadows, which is anyway, what a lucky coincidence. A week before Buddy Holly dies in a plane crash near Fargo, a group of middle school boys in Fargo start a Buddy Holly band and begin rehearsing his hits. Remember at the time that it isn't like the news today, okay? So they were in Fargo, North Dakota, but they would have to go to Minnesota, right? How did they get the news in Minnesota? They were in high school. How'd they get the plea for this? Anyway, okay, whatever. It's just not plausible, but okay. So how'd they hear about it? Whatever. So their lead singer, Bobby V, memorizes all of Buddy Holly's lyrics in only a week. And when Holly dies, this little 15-year-old fills in for him at a local dance, becoming an overnight sensation. Do you believe he's an overnight sensation? Okay. So this is the cover story, and this was February of 1959. And before the year's out, Bobby V will have to cut his own record called Susie Baby. And who do you think was asked to come in and play with him? Let me guess. So I might be showing his picture on YouTube. So he cuts his own record. They call it Susie Baby. It's sold to a company capable of releasing it overnight. 15-year-old. Scored a hit. And in the same year, he'll be signed by an even larger record company that'll be touring. And in that same year, Bob Dylan, I know, Bob Dylan is not his real name. Bob Dylan will play with the band in Minneapolis under the stage name Elston Gunn. Okay. It's almost like don't look at us until I become famous, and then I'll become somebody else and change my name and remove my history as a person, but whatever. So, yeah. How do you score all that attention? Right. And why was Dylan chosen to play all above all others to play the keyboards for V? I don't know. It's kind of like it was manufactured to be so. I'm just going to go with that. So anyway, he was a frat boy. His name was Zimmerman. He was from Hibbing, Minnesota. His uncle, great-grandfather was from Hibbing, a town of about 17,000 people that seemed to produce a ton of people that were active in the deep state. And I mean a ton. So very interesting. And we're supposed, and his father, Eugene Zimmerman, on the board of Standard Oil. So that was kind of interesting too. So there's a lot there about Bob Dylan becoming this overnight success that's really, really, really unbelievable. Completely unbelievable. And I don't know that if you're lacking all plausibility, I'm not quite sure you can sell it. So when you go back and you look at who we are and who like the Grateful Dead, they were outed CIA. Yes, that's true. We had this character emerge, change his name. We had Bobby V at 15. We had the Beatles suddenly emerge with no original music, no original anything. And there's just too many weird things about all of this that tell me that not only is it not plausible, there's no way any of that could happen naturally, but the fact that it's like, well, they're famous, so famous people can kind of get away with nothing being plausible. I don't know. It's almost like we just turn a blind eye because we've heard the story so many times that we can't differentiate anymore and say, well, wait a minute, this was weird and that was weird, and I know what a 19-year-old looks like playing, and I know that if somebody can't write a song, how in the world are they suddenly becoming the Beatles and writing all this music that sounds completely different, these masterful pieces of music that somebody couldn't write unless they were just a savant, which the Beatles were not a savant. Why did the height change for Paul McCartney? Obviously, to me, it was a stand-in. It was somebody else. Who was that? It was either his brother, or it was maybe they were lying about a twin. They love their twins. Or maybe it was a complete and total stand-in. You never know. I think we'd probably be shocked to know what really took place, because honestly, you can't hide the height. You can't tell me that this guy is the same height as Ringo and then this guy is taller, like looking down on Ringo, like a half a head taller. Like there's no way. It's just not doable. It's just not plausible. Okay. So what's the answer? There has to be an answer somewhere, right, in all of this. And the hard part is, for a lot of people that are woke, they're going to be telling me off in the comments. They're doing that right now, right? They're telling me off, and I must be MAGA. What does MAGA have to do with anything I'm talking about today? Like, it's just amazing to me how stupid people are. But they have to just have some kind of answer, so they just throw it out there, I guess. I don't know. It's just weird. But you're MAGA. Oh, what does that even mean? Like, I'm trying to do a show on the Beatles. So if I can look at the 60s and I can see that there's a major problem with plausibility of any of this happening organically, but we're sold that the Stones, everybody that came out of this, Jim Morrison's father was high up in intelligence, okay, and he came and did the Laurel Canyon thing. Laurel Canyon was a big production factory for the 60s, the hippie movement in the 70s. So if I can go back and I can see all of this, then why do you think the woke, okay, the idiots among us, the asses, the masses, why do you think they have such a problem? So they have to tear me down because they can't handle that they were lied to by their beloved government, that there's a part of government that oversees government, that is in charge of all government, that is lying to us daily and brainwashing us. Why do you think they have the inability to see that? Is it that their love for government, all of us giving our money to them and them deciding where it goes? Is it because they love the government so much, or is it because the reality can't be rocked? Like their reality, like they're too fragile. I almost think it's kind of, and I hate to say this, but like a weak fragility thing. Like you can't think about all of the things that are factual about what happened, and of course not plausible. So you have to just tear down the person that's pointing it out rather than really thinking about it. I actually wrote an ebook called something on the bridge. Can't even remember what the name of my own ebook is. My brain hurts right now, but it's all about bridging the gap, and it's all about talking to woke people and having them understand maybe how they've been lied to, how to have a conversation with somebody and still remain friends as much as you possibly can. But I always notice that the woke people will always tear me down in the comments. Like they have to. It's the only ammunition they can find. It's kind of like saying the F word all the time because you're not intelligent enough to articulate. So you just go F this, F that. Like because you can't articulate anything. So I think that woke people, this is why it's so hard to talk to them, is because they can't just sit and listen. They can't sit and just truly think about things. And this goes for the neocon right as well. The right that is just so into there's a savior coming to save us, and don't look at anything that's actually happening. Just know we're in good hands, like they're the same as those people. Just the woke people will get on the comments on YouTube and they'll just come after me, right? They just have to say the nastiest things. And some of them are bots, and I know that, but I'm sure there are some people that have to tear you down because they don't know what else to say. They haven't done any homework. They don't want to look at any of this. They are almost like, do not show me, because whatever you have to say, you must be a Republican. So therefore, I can't listen. And if we talk about the divide in this country, the only divide we have going on is a manufactured divide that tells people to stop listening once you hear somebody's political affiliation. I have a couple of woke friends, believe it or not. I have a couple of gay friends, believe it or not. I have neocon friends who can't see anything, and they honestly think that we're being saved right now. We're not. Government's owned, so we're not getting saved. And I have friends that are awake. And I'm always willing to listen. I'm always willing to hear what they have to say. But I don't just hurl comments at them. If they were going to explain to me, go down a rabbit hole, and let's say they took apart the Titanic. There's a lot to take apart there. And let's say they wanted to do a show on the Titanic. I wouldn't sit there and just keep calling them names. I'd want to know what they had to say, because I'd want to know how it married with what I had researched. And not that I would want to only hear what I had researched, but maybe there's pieces and parts that they have to say that are true that I can glean off of that. Okay. The other thing is when you step away from God, which I've noticed a lot of woke people do, they're smarter than God. Okay. They're smarter than all of us who believe in God. They lose the ability to then take in information to understand maybe what's true or what's not true. So they lose that spiritual filtration. And honestly, the only thing that's gotten me through 16 years of this is that spiritual filtration. If I didn't have that, I don't even know what I would think right now. So I think they've lost that ability to connect. So the only thing they can do is just hurl insults instead of saying, I want to just listen to what you have to say. Take it in. It's kind of like the people that trash you. Instead of just scrolling past your comment, they have to trash you and discredit you instead of just scrolling on. Just scroll on. You don't even have to like comment. It's the same kind of person, right? So not quite sure why it is that way, or what it is behind that totally. But I will say this, for us to be in a state right now where this is the political climate, you're Republican, you're evil, and I can't listen to you. And you're woke and kind of idiotic, and I can't listen to you. Okay. You have a love for government, so you don't want to hear anything else. Or you have a love for feeling like we're getting saved right now when we're not. But we could still listen to each other. We could still listen to I could still give you the respect of listening to you for an hour if I wanted to hear about what you had on the subject. But the reason that we're in this political climate now was a sincere effort of brainwashing, courtesy of intelligence that came at us on a level that and the foundations, complimentary of the foundations like Carnegie and the Ford Foundation that stepped into corrupt education. All of this coming at us, all of this we are the result. They want us to be fighting each other, and they want you to call me names on this broadcast, because the more that we're at odds, and somebody just uses the word MAGA, like to shut up a conversation, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Honestly, I mean, you can't be that retarded, but okay. So they go MAGA, like, you know, I mean, it's almost like a 4-year-old, you know, I don't know what else to say. So MAGA, you know, like even though you're talking about the Beatles, MAGA, you know, so whatever. But the reason that we're here is because they don't want us seeing who's behind all the brainwashing. They just want us to be fighting each other. And it's working, obviously. All you have to do is take a look at the comments on StreamYard, on YouTube, on X. You'll see on Facebook, and it's hilarious because people are that stupid that they don't even know they're being brainwashed. They don't even know at this point. So it is kind of interesting. Now, you can take everything I just said and you could go, well, I think that's crazy. Okay, I guess you can. I don't know if you can explain away just with this height difference, or I don't know. I mean, it's there. I don't know how you cannot see it. Look at pictures before 1966 and look at pictures after. Or you can call me YouTube Karen. Really? I'm a YouTube Karen because I'm discussing the Beatles? I mean, how stupid could you be? But this is kind of the result of the stupidity of the masses, the asses, as my husband calls them, the asses. It's like they're raising their hand and they're going, I'm brainwashed and I'm proud of it. So I'm going to go along with everything I've been brainwashed to think, instead of critically thinking and asking questions and being curious. Man, I hope we can bring curiosity back. I really do. Please. Okay. There were more than just physical things going on. I'm just pointing out some of the obvious things, but let me just say this again. This was a group of teenage boys who were who were taken to Germany for 3 months to be given music to work on so they could appear to be a band. 3 months is not long. Then they come back to Liverpool, and they are they bring on an agent who is 20. You know, he was 20 years old, 21, and he this was their only act. This was his only act, and he had nobody on his Rolodex. But suddenly, he had everyone on his Rolodex, and he was able to call Capitol Records and tell them to launch the biggest campaign that they ever have in the United States ever for any group and any musical group ever. And it was a whole total of 6 months, and they were the biggest splash ever. And they came up with song after song after song, hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. They all sounded different. And we believed it. And then they even told you who they were. Sergeant Pepper, the head of MI6's Lonely Hearts Club Band, because I'm sure that it is a Lonely Hearts Club band to be in this group of manufactured people that are there to sway and brainwashed. But whatever. They even told us who they are. John Lennon even speaks to it, comes out and talks about it. Okay, there's many tells along the way. I didn't even get into it. We'll have to do a part 3 because there's so much more to get into. But it's funny because they can't look at this and even ask the question of why are all these people on this cover and what are they talking about? Okay, it's like a disconnect. It's like this crazy disconnect. What are we gonna do? So, I'm. Every single time, most people don't believe your delusion, Karen. No, my name is Kate, but thank you. Actually, more people are starting to question the Beatles than ever before. And more people are starting to question the sudden and amazing and not plausible cultural revolution that happened that was completely brought on by the propaganda assets, part of the intelligence racket. So maybe someday you'll get on board and grow a brain. I don't know. But it's pretty amazing that people are still out there not asking questions and thinking government is your best friend. So I don't know what else to say other than it's just too much, too not plausible. I don't know what else to say. In fact, in their own words, let me play this opening clip for you. Oops, sorry about that. That was the intro music. Here we go. This is for all the people that can't think.
At the festival, you worked for the
Gloria Steinem.
Independent Research Service.
That's right.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea, too. Particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than
points of view
the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
What do you mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group. And I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962. You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had that I have for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent. I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does the CIA.
Yeah, and she was put on the college campuses for a reason, to do what she was doing, right? So she was, the whole women's movement started off, people took the bait, but it was really started by intelligence. I've done many shows on the different characters that cropped up to sell that to us. One was insane, by the way, put into a mental hospital. But anyway, here we go.
Why do you still do it? Why are you still out here?
Bob Dylan.
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. I made a bargain with it, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my hand.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
On this earth?
And on this earth, and then in a world we can't see.
Oh, he never says God.
You said once that you thought that your father was a CIA operative. Yes?
Yeah, he was.
Woody
How do you know?
Harrelson.
What proof?
See, I shouldn't get into this right now.
Ooh,
I think all our society is run by
John Lennon.
insane people for insane objectives. You know, and I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12, way down the line.
16
But I
and
expressed
12.
it differently all through my life.
Hmm.
It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time. But now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends. You know, if anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane.
That's John
You know,
Lennon.
but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it.
You know what's interesting about that? I'll still have comments on YouTube. I'll still have the woke. I'll still have the idiotic, the morons go, "You're paranoid." I'm like, John Lennon just sounded paranoid, but you don't want to listen to him say it from his own lips. I guess I'm the one because I'm listening to John Lennon say it. John Lennon just told you that at the age of 12 and 16, he found out that there were some really bad, insane people that wanted to rule the world, and that he sussed that. Let me play it for you one more time, just because you know this is coming from him, right? So I love how they always attack me. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, he was.
Oh,
How
sorry.
do you know?
Yeah.
What proof?
See,
I think all our society is run by insane people
Really?
for insane objectives. You know, and I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12, way down the line. But I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time. But now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal
Run by
ends,
maniacs, you say.
If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it.
Oh, yeah. But,
If you only knew how much money has been spent to brainwash you, you would actually feel really special. That Kate Dalley show starts now.
That is true. And Lennon went along with the maniacs. Yes. Thank you, Lynn. He did. And he's telling you, he sussed it out when he was 12 and 16, that this was the case. So what's funny and odd is that people will say, I'm a conspiracy theorist for bringing up what he's admitting to, what he's talking about himself. But I'm the conspiracy theorist for believing him when he says it. I know we live in an insane world with crazy people, with honestly, insane. You know what it is? It's mostly just ignorance, because people just don't study anything out. They don't. And they just want to believe in rainbows and lollipops and it all happened the way they said. And they like the movies and they like the emotion, and they just like the emotion wrapped up in a complete unknown movie about Bob Dylan and his rise to fame. Okay. I don't know what else to say other than he was heavily promoted. He was given music. I don't think Bob Dylan's the poet everyone thinks he is. And neither were the Beatles, and neither was Elvis. They were all manufactured creations. And I think once you kind of finally wrap your brain around that, I think it's a little easier to see the 60s cultural revolution. There was an effort to remove people from Christianity. There was an effort to bring on the drug culture. Okay. normalize it, get people excited about it, okay, and escape. There was a movement, the word teenager was never used before the Beatles, okay? It was, all of these words were brought in by Tavistock that were there to implement themselves into society and culture as a way to kind of step back from the parents, and disrupt families, okay? And then you had the women's movement to destroy families, to get women to be the second income tax paying bracket, because that whole force of women wasn't working, and then they were. So there's a lot of money involved, and that money, and obviously the ability to go, well, my work is more important. What I do for a living is more important than raising my own children. That cascaded into lock key kids, and to what we have now, a society of divorce, a society where moms are hardly ever home to raise their children. And it's causing a lot of problems and issues in our culture. We're also at a point where we can't talk to each other because they've done the right left game so hard on us that we believe it. We believe it. If you point out stuff about the Beatles, you must be a conspiracy theorist, even though there's a lot to point out. If, you know, it's just amazing to me how all of the bylines are written, all of the narratives are written for us. And you are this person if you say this, and this person if you say this. I don't know why we're not more curious, and maybe it's the fluoride, I don't know, but I wish and hope that we could become that, especially after 2020, when you finally realize your government was just bold-faced lying to you. I mean, I hope by now. It was funny. There was a local editor, reporter of a local rag in Utah here, and he was like, you know, oh, this whole Fauci thing is dreamed up by the conspiracy theorists. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you... There were, you know, we would have had 0 births. This is literally what this guy said. And he considers himself a good writer, good journalist. And he goes, we would have had 0 births if it would have had the impact on fertility, the shots, the COVID shots that were actually told to us by Pfizer. So it's in Pfizer's document that the Pfizer shots had an effect on fertility. Okay. A lot of miscarriages. In fact, years ago, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, if you had a regular doctor's office, you maybe get a miscarriage every 3 to 4 months. Okay. 3 months. Now it's daily. I don't know if people realize that it's every day they're experiencing miscarriages. And this guy wrote, we would have 0 births. And I'm like, I'm flabbergasted at the level of stupidity with our journalists. I mean, they're just so stupid. I mean, they honestly are just so ignorant. And there was a brochure given out with the original COVID shot. And I talked about it and showed it on the air and on Facebook, where I said, this is what brochure you got nationally when you went in to take the COVID shot. And it actually said on there, on the COVID shot, it said, on the brochure, it said, if you want to get pregnant or currently trying to get pregnant, do not take this shot. Why do you think it said that in the fine print? It's in the fine print. You can look it up. It's the brochure they gave everybody in the country. I don't know about the world, but they gave everybody here the same brochure federally. And it was, if you want to get pregnant, or you think about getting pregnant, or you're trying to get pregnant now, don't take this shot. Do you think people were told that when they went in? Of course not, because they knew it would mess with fertility. And I can promise you that stupid ass like journalist who's not a journalist. We don't even have a good editor or journalist where I live. I'm in St. George, Utah. News is horrible here. It's propagandized to the hilt. And there was a significant portion of information in Pfizer's own documentation, in their own reports, that said that there was a huge impact on fertility. These weren't safe. Okay. And you can go look that information up. But the journalists don't read it. They never read anything. They just copycat the AP. We're lying scumbaggery of the AP. AP's been the lying scumbaggery in this country for 200 years almost. So 170 years. So look, we're in a world of hurt. We got a lot of people who are not educated, won't go look at anything, won't go look at reports, won't go look at congressional records. I will, you will. Most of the people I'm commenting on here that are being rude won't. They never will. They'll never look at a report because they only believe mainstream. Mainstream tells them what to think. They think it, they're brainwashed. What do you do? So I really appreciate you guys listening in. There's way more to tell on this. I wanted to kind of give you more of an encompassed view of the 60s because so much of it, there was so many different angles that led to different angles as we went. But they really, once that intelligence racket was applied with all the budget they ever wanted or desired, black budget off the books, and no oversight by anyone, even the presidency, even Congress, even the Senate. And that happened in the late 40s. Once that took root, we were screwed. We were screwed. So, because it was all about brainwashing. The Cold War was a distraction. That was an excuse that they gave to exist. It was all about brainwashing us. And it was truly at the root was about taking us from God. That's really what's at the root, because it goes back 75 years before the 60s, where there was a concerted effort to bring about Marxism to bring about this removal from God, no roots. You're like a rolling stone. You roll down the hill and you amass this different life away from your roots, away from your family, and you pick up whatever's in your wake. That's what it was about. So, and they were very effective at it. Mick Jagger was once asked why he does the music he does, and he said point blank, it's to make people want to have sex. It's why he's here. Okay, it's what it was all about for him. I'm just saying. You got Bob Dylan contracting with the chief, whatever he called him, not God, no, for his fame, for his fortune. It's just really, 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 really interesting. Anyway, when you really start to dial in and look at all of the pieces together. So I really appreciate you guys. Go get some Cardio Miracle. It really, truly is amazing stuff. Has really helped me. I can't even tell you how much this year. I mean, I don't go without it. My husband doesn't go without it. Every morning I come out, find the bag on the counter. My husband doesn't put it away. I always laugh because I'm like, every day I put it away after I use it. But Cardio Miracle, and it's an amazing product with 20 times the fruits and veggies that you're getting. Also, go to the ebooks. There's one on AI, the bait and switch that's coming. There's one on cancer, how to do it naturally without chemo. I have to be careful of the words I use. YouTube loves their censorship. And then also the truth about organ donation that no one realizes. And oh my gosh, the other ones, can't remember them. Anyway, there's 5 right now. You can still grab them today. I won't take it down till tonight, but the 5 for $34, and it's like 60% off. So there you go. Be faithful, be fearless. I'll see you again here tomorrow. We're going to be talking about a terrific book tomorrow that's so telling about another angle of brainwashing that is just amazing with Melissa. So I'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Go to katedalleyradio.com. Or go to katetalks.myshopify.com. Help the show, donate to the show. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.